The cathedral doors slam shut behind her, and Elena Carter runs, mascara bleeding down her face, wedding dress dragging through rain-soaked streets. 200 guests just watched Ryan Whitmore destroy her at the altar, calling her a mistake his family can't afford. Her mother's medical bills are drowning her. Her apartment lease ends in 3 days. She has nothing left. Then a black car pulls up beside her, and a man she's never met leans out. "Get in, Elena. I have a proposition that will make Ryan Whitmore regret every word he just said. If you want to see revenge served cold, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels." The rain came down in sheets, which felt appropriate, like the universe itself had decided to weep for Elena Carter's spectacular humiliation. She stumbled down the cathedral steps, her wedding dress already ruined, the hem black with grime and water. Behind her, the massive oak doors remained firmly shut, as if the building itself wanted to forget she'd ever been inside. 200 people had just watched her fiancé destroy her. Not quietly, not privately. Ryan Whitmore had done it at the altar, with the priest standing right there, with both families seated in the front pews. He'd waited until the moment when the priest asked if anyone objected to the union, then he'd turned to face the crowd himself. "I do," he'd said, his voice carrying through the vaulted space with perfect clarity. "I object to this marriage because Elena Carter is not the woman I thought she was. She's a fraud who hid her family's poverty, her mother's gambling debts, and her own desperate financial situation. My family deserves better than a gold digger." Elena had stood there, frozen, the bouquet trembling in her hands, unable to process what was happening. Her mother, pale and sickly in the third row, had let out a strangled sound. Ryan's mother, Victoria Whitmore, had looked pleased. It had all been a setup, a calculated public execution. She tried to speak, to defend herself, but Ryan had already turned to the priest. "There will be no wedding today. Please escort Miss Carter out." Miss Carter. Not even his fiancée anymore. Just a mistake to be removed. Now she ran blindly through streets she barely recognized, her mind spinning in useless circles. The wedding planner had chosen this cathedral specifically because of its location in the historic district, far from Elena's modest neighborhood, deep in the heart of old money. She didn't even know which direction would take her home. Not that home mattered anymore. She'd given up her apartment lease 3 weeks ago, planning to move into Ryan's penthouse after the honeymoon. Her few belongings were in storage. She had $247 in her checking account and a credit card that was maxed out from trying to contribute to wedding expenses Ryan had insisted weren't proper for his family to cover entirely. Her mother was in a nursing facility that cost $6,000 a month. Money Elena had been scraping together through 2 jobs while Ryan promised that after the wedding, he'd take care of everything. She'd believed him. Like an idiot, she'd believed every word. The rain soaked through her dress, making the fabric cling to her skin. She needed to find shelter, needed to think, needed to figure out what the hell she was going to do now. But her legs kept moving, carrying her down one street and then another, past shops that were closed for Sunday, past cafes with people staring out windows at the crazy woman in a ruined wedding dress. She finally stopped in an alley between 2 buildings, pressing her back against cold brick, trying to catch her breath. The tears came then, hot and angry and useless. She'd spent 3 years with Ryan, 3 years of carefully meeting every expectation his family set, of learning which fork to use at formal dinners, of pretending she didn't notice how his mother looked at her clothes and her background like they were stains to be scrubbed away. And for what? So he could destroy her in front of everyone who mattered in this city? Elena Carter? She jerked her head up. A man stood at the mouth of the alley, tall, dark-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her mother's monthly care. He wasn't from the wedding. She would have remembered him. Everything about him commanded attention, from his sharp features to the way he stood perfectly still, watching her with eyes that seemed to catalog every detail. "How do you know my name?" Her voice came out ragged. "I know quite a bit about you." He stepped closer, and she tensed, but something in his posture wasn't threatening. It was assessing. "I know you're a surgical nurse at Metropolitan. I know you've been supporting your mother since she had her stroke 2 years ago. I know Ryan Whitmore strung you along until today because his family needed a distraction while they restructured their assets to avoid a fraud investigation. Elena's breath caught. What? The Whitmores are broke, the man said simply. Have been for 6 months. They've been selling off properties and businesses, funneling money through shell corporations. Today's wedding was supposed to be their coming out party, proof that they're still on top, still powerful enough to marry into old society families. Your family might not have money, but your bloodline goes back 4 generations in this city. That mattered to them. Then why? Because they've decided to cut their losses and run. Ryan's father is moving the family to London next week, and they can't afford any anchors. You were the anchor. He tilted his head. The public humiliation was intentional. It ensures you won't have the social capital to ask questions or cause problems for them. The words landed like physical blows. Elena's knees felt weak. Who are you? Luca De Luca. He said it like she should recognize the name. When she didn't react, something flickered in his expression. Approval, maybe. I have a proposition for you. I don't need... Your mother's facility sent her discharge papers yesterday. You have 72 hours to arrange alternative care or pay the outstanding balance of $18,000. Your apartment is already rented to new tenants. You have no job to go back to tomorrow because you quit 2 weeks ago when Ryan convinced you that working wasn't appropriate for a Whitmore wife. He paused. Did I miss anything? Elena felt like she was going to be sick. He was right about all of it. She'd been so focused on the wedding, on becoming the person Ryan's family needed her to be, that she'd systematically dismantled every safety net she had. What do you want? She asked quietly. I want you to marry me instead. The laugh that escaped her was brittle. You're insane. I'm practical. Luca moved closer, and she could see his eyes were dark gray like storm clouds. You need money, security, and revenge. I need a wife who understands that marriage can be a business transaction and who won't have unrealistic expectations about love and fidelity. We both get what we want. Why would you possibly need that? My reasons are my own, but I'm offering you a way out of the hole Ryan Whitmore just threw you into. He pulled out a phone, tapped the screen a few times, and turned it toward her. That's the contract I'm proposing. Read it. Elena stared at the document on the screen. It was detailed, professional, and utterly surreal. Marriage duration, minimum 3 years. Financial terms. All her debts cleared immediately, $10,000 monthly allowance, full medical care for her mother in a top-tier facility. Her obligations. Appear with him at social and business functions. Maintain the appearance of a legitimate marriage. Sign a comprehensive NDA. This is insane, she repeated, but her voice was weaker now. This is survival. Luca's tone didn't change. In 10 minutes, I'm getting back in my car. If you come with me, we'll have you married by tomorrow morning. I have connections at the courthouse. If you don't, you're on your own with no money, no home, and a mother who needs care you can't provide. You don't even know me. I know enough. You're proud but not stupid, loyal but not a martyr. And right now you're angry enough to take a risk if it means Ryan Whitmore sees you win. He lowered the phone. Am I wrong? She wanted to say yes, wanted to tell this stranger to go to hell and figure things out on her own. But the truth was staring her in the face. She had nothing, no leverage, no options, no time. And the image of Ryan's satisfied smile as she'd fled the cathedral made something dark and furious coil in her chest. If I say yes, she said slowly, what happens to the Whitmores? Luca's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. What do you want to happen to them? I want them to regret it, all of it. Then we have an agreement. He held out his hand. Come with me, Elena. Let's give them something to regret. She looked at his hand for a long moment. This was crazy. She didn't know this man, didn't know what his real motives were, didn't know what she was actually agreeing to. Every rational part of her brain was screaming to walk away, but she was so tired of being rational. Being rational had gotten her humiliated at the altar. Elena placed her wet, trembling hand in his. His grip was warm and steady. All right, she whispered. Let's do it. Luca's car was a black Mercedes with tinted windows and leather seats that probably cost more than Elena's entire wardrobe. A driver opened the door for her without comment on her bedraggled appearance, and she slid inside, suddenly aware of how ridiculous she must look, wedding dress and all. Luca got in beside her and immediately pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. "We're going to my house first. You'll need clothes and time to compose yourself before we handle the legal paperwork." "Where do you live?" "North Shore." He didn't look up from his phone. Elena blinked. North Shore was where the real money lived. Estates with gates and security, houses that appeared in architectural magazines. Ryan's family had a property there, though they'd been trying to sell it for months, according to what Luca had said. "I can't just disappear," she said. "My mother is being transferred to Brightwater Manor as we speak. I made the arrangements while you were deciding." He finally looked at her. "I told you I handle things efficiently. You were that sure I'd say yes. I was that sure you're smart enough to recognize an opportunity." He gestured to a small bar built into the car's interior. "There's water and whiskey if you need it." She grabbed the water, hands still shaking. "Why are you doing this? And don't tell me it's just because you need a wife. Rich men don't need to rescue ruined brides in alleys for that." "You're right." Luca put his phone away and turned to face her fully. "I need a wife who's presentable, intelligent enough to handle high society functions, and who won't ask questions about my business. Most importantly, I need someone who has no connections to the families I work with, someone who won't be a security risk." "What business are you in?" "Several. Import/export, real estate, private security consulting." His tone made it clear that was all the details she'd get. "What matters is that being married provides me certain advantages in negotiations and appearances. And having a wife with an interesting backstory, the woman who was humiliated by Ryan Whitmore only to land on her feet spectacularly, will make those appearances even more effective." "I'm a prop," Elena said flatly. "We're both props in each other's arrangements. That's what makes it fair." He studied her face. "Having second thoughts?" She should be, but the alternative was going back to nothing, to watching her mother deteriorate in some state facility, while Elena scrambled for jobs that wouldn't hire her because Ryan's family had probably already poisoned every well in the city. "No," she said. "No second thoughts. But I want to know what I'm actually walking into. You said you handle several businesses. What does that mean?" Luca was quiet for a moment, and Elena got the distinct impression he was deciding how much truth to give her. Finally, he said, "It means I operate in spaces where the law is more of a guideline than a rule. I have enemies, which is why security at my home is extensive. I have allies who are dangerous people, and I have a reputation for being someone you don't cross." "You're in the Mafia." It wasn't a question. "That's a simplistic term for a complex reality, but essentially, yes." He said it so calmly, like he was discussing the weather. "Does that change your answer?" "It should. It absolutely should." But Elena found herself thinking about Ryan's face, about his mother's pleased smile, about the 200 people who'd watched her get destroyed and done nothing. "Will I be in danger?" she asked instead. "No. You'll have security, and I'm very good at keeping my world separate from my personal life. As long as you follow the rules in the contract and don't ask questions about things that don't concern you, you'll be perfectly safe. And if I break the rules, then we'll have a different conversation." His tone made it clear she wouldn't enjoy that conversation. "But I don't think you will. You're too smart for that." The car pulled through an iron gate and up a long driveway lined with trees. The house that came into view was massive, 3 stories of stone and glass, with grounds that stretched in every direction. Elena felt her stomach drop. This wasn't just wealthy, this was powerful. "Welcome home," Luca said dryly, noticing her expression. "Try not to look too overwhelmed at public events. Part of selling this marriage is you appearing comfortable in this world." "I'll do my best," Elena muttered. The driver opened her door and she stepped out onto cobblestones, acutely aware that she was still wearing a ruined wedding dress. A woman appeared at the front door, older, with sharp eyes and a professional demeanor. "This is Teresa," Luca said, coming around the car. "She manages the household staff." "Teresa, this is Elena Carter. She'll be staying here, and tomorrow she'll be Elena DeLuca." Teresa's expression didn't flicker. "Of course, sir. Miss Carter, if you'll follow me, I'll show you to your room and arrange for some appropriate clothing." "Thank you," Elena managed. She followed Teresa into the house, through a foyer with marble floors and a chandelier that probably cost more than her mother's medical bills, up a curved staircase, and down a hallway lined with art that looked museum quality. Teresa opened a door to a bedroom that was bigger than Elena's entire former apartment. "The bathroom is through there," Teresa said, pointing. "I'll have clothing brought up within the hour. Dinner is at 7 if you'd like to join Mr. DeLuca, or I can have something sent to your room." "I'll eat in my room," Elena said quickly. She needed time to process this, to figure out what she'd just agreed to. "Very well. Is there anything else you need? A phone charger? Mine died during—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "I'll bring one immediately." Teresa paused at the door. "Miss Carter? Mr. DeLuca is many things, but he keeps his word. If he's promised you something, he'll deliver." Then she was gone, leaving Elena alone in a bedroom that belonged in a magazine spread. She walked to the window and looked out at manicured grounds that seemed to go on forever. In the distance, she could see a pool house and what looked like a tennis court. 24 hours ago, she'd been putting final touches on her wedding day timeline, excited about marrying Ryan and starting their life together. Now she was standing in a stranger's mansion, having agreed to marry a man who'd just admitted to being in the Mafia, all because she had no other choice. Elena caught sight of herself in a full-length mirror and almost laughed at the absurdity. She looked like something from a horror movie: wedding dress destroyed, makeup running down her face, hair plastered to her head. The girl in that mirror looked broken. But as Elena stared at her reflection, she felt something else rising beneath the shock and fear. Something that felt like anger, sharp and clarifying. Ryan had thrown her away like garbage. His family had used her and discarded her. And they'd done it publicly, confident that she had no power to fight back. They were wrong. Elena turned away from the mirror and started working on the buttons of the ruined dress. Luca DeLuca might be using her for his own purposes, but she'd use him right back. This marriage would give her security, revenge, and a chance to rebuild. And when she walked back into that world that had watched her fall, she'd make sure everyone understood. Elena Carter was done being a victim. The next morning came too fast. Elena had barely slept, spending most of the night reading through the contract Luca had sent to a tablet Teresa delivered with her clothes. The document was thorough to the point of being invasive, detailing everything from public behavior expectations to financial arrangements to what would happen if either of them wanted out before the 3-year minimum. What struck her most was how cold it all was. This wasn't a marriage. It was a merger with extremely specific terms and conditions. At 8 a.m., there was a knock on her door. Luca's voice came through. "The courthouse appointment is at 10. We need to leave in 45 minutes. Elena stared at the ceiling. This was it. Last chance to back out, to say this was insane and take her chances on her own. She got up and went to the closet where Teresa had hung several outfits. For a wedding at the courthouse, she chose something simple: a cream-colored dress that was elegant without being bridal, paired with a blazer that gave her a sense of armor. When she came downstairs, Luca was waiting in the foyer. He'd changed into a different suit, charcoal gray this time, and he studied her appearance with the same assessing look from yesterday. "You clean up well," he said. Not a compliment, just an observation. "Thanks, I think. The ceremony will be quick. I have 2 witnesses arranged, my lawyer and his assistant. After we sign the paperwork, we'll return here. Tonight, there's a charity gala I need to attend, and you'll come with me as my wife." Elena's stomach dropped. "Tonight? That's too fast. I can't." "You can, and you will." Luca's tone was firm but not unkind. "The faster we establish this marriage publicly, the faster the benefits kick in for both of us. Ryan Whitmore and his family will be at that gala. It's your first opportunity to show them exactly how far you've risen from yesterday." The mention of Ryan made something burn in Elena's chest. "What will you tell people? About us, I mean. They'll want to know how we met." "We'll keep it simple and close to the truth. We met months ago through mutual friends, kept things private, and when your wedding fell through, I saw an opportunity. People will fill in the romantic details themselves. They always do. And if someone asks why you'd marry a woman who was publicly humiliated yesterday," Luca's expression was unreadable, "then I'll tell them I don't give a damn about the opinions of people like the Whitmores," which happens to be true. They rode to the courthouse in silence. Elena's mind was spinning with everything that was about to happen. In less than an hour, she'd be married to a man she didn't know, bound by a contract that read like a business deal, stepping into a world she didn't understand. The courthouse ceremony was exactly as impersonal as she'd expected. A judge who was clearly doing Luca a favor handled the paperwork efficiently. The vows were the standard legal version. No personal touches, no emotion. When the judge said, "You may kiss the bride," Luca leaned in and gave her a brief, chaste kiss that felt more like sealing a contract than celebrating a union. "Congratulations," the lawyer said, handing them copies of the marriage certificate. "Mrs. DeLuca." Mrs. DeLuca. Elena Carter was gone. She'd been erased twice in 2 days, once by Ryan, once by her own choice. Back in the car, Luca made phone calls while Elena stared at the marriage certificate in her hands. The document made it real in a way nothing else had. "Second thoughts?" Luca asked, putting his phone away. "Just processing." "Don't process too long. We need to prep you for tonight." "Prep me?" "The people at that gala will be looking for weakness. They'll want to know if you're worth their time or if you're just another gold digger who lucked into money. You need to walk in there like you belong. Like marrying me was always the plan, and Ryan Whitmore was just a stepping stone you've already forgotten." "That's a lot to pull off in one night." "Then it's good you're motivated." He studied her. "Tell me what you know about Ryan's family business." "Just what everyone knows. They run Whitmore Investments. They have properties all over the city. They've been part of high society for generations." "Wrong. Whitmore Investments is a shell. The real money came from Ryan's grandfather, who made his fortune in pharmaceutical patents. That money was supposed to sustain 3 generations, but Ryan's father gambled it away trying to break into hotel development. They've been selling assets for 2 years, hiding it behind strategic restructuring narratives." Luca leaned back. "Tonight, that information is going to become public knowledge. The business section of every major paper will run stories tomorrow morning about the Whitmore Empire's collapse." Elena's eyes widened. "How do you know that?" "Because I'm the one who sold the story to the papers. I've had reporters investigating the Whitmores for months, waiting for the right time to publish." His expression was cold. "That time is now. When you walk into that gala tonight, the Whitmores will be scrambling to contain a scandal that's about to destroy them, and you'll be on my arm, untouchable." "You planned this." It wasn't a question. "Even before yesterday." "I planned to destroy the Whitmores, yes. Running into you yesterday was coincidence, but useful coincidence. This way, you get revenge and I get a wife who has personal motivation to help me bury them." He tilted his head. "Does that bother you?" "It should." But Elena found herself thinking about Ryan's voice in the cathedral, about Victoria Whitmore's pleased smile, about the whispers that had followed her as she ran. "No," she said quietly, "it doesn't bother me at all." Bah! The rest of the day was a blur of preparation. Teresa assigned Elena a stylist who arrived with racks of evening gowns. A hairdresser and makeup artist followed. By 6 p.m., Elena barely recognized herself in the mirror. The gown was emerald green silk that fit like it had been made for her, with a neckline that was elegant without being revealing. Her hair was styled in loose waves, and the makeup was dramatic but sophisticated. Diamond earrings that Teresa brought in a locked case completed the look. "Mr. DeLuca will meet you downstairs at 7, Teresa said, supervising the final touches. "Remember to stand straight, make eye contact, and don't apologize for anything. You're a DeLuca now. Act like it." When Elena descended the stairs at 7, Luca was waiting in the foyer. He'd changed into a tuxedo that made him look even more intimidating than usual. His eyes traveled over her appearance with that same assessing look. "Perfect," he said. Not a compliment, an evaluation. "One more thing." He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it. Inside was a ring, a flawless emerald surrounded by diamonds set in platinum. It was breathtaking and probably worth more than Elena's entire former life. "Give me your hand." She extended her left hand, and he slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, which shouldn't have surprised her at this point. Luca seemed like the type who got every detail right. "This stays on at all times in public," he said. "It's a statement." "What kind of statement?" "That you're mine, and that I don't do anything halfway." He offered his arm. "Ready?" No, she wasn't ready at all, but she took his arm anyway and they walked out to the car. The gala was being held at the Belmont Hotel, one of the city's most prestigious venues. As they pulled up to the entrance, Elena could see photographers and a red carpet. This wasn't just a charity event, it was a scene. "Smile," Luca said as the driver opened the door. "And remember, you're exactly where you're supposed to be." They stepped out, and immediately the cameras started flashing. Elena felt Luca's hand at the small of her back, steady and grounding. They moved down the carpet, and she heard whispers around them, people recognizing her, recognizing him, trying to piece together what this meant. Inside, the ballroom was filled with the same people who'd been at the cathedral yesterday. Elena recognized faces from the wedding, Ryan's business associates, his parents' friends, the society women who'd once looked at her like she was beneath them. Now those same people stared at her with confusion and something that looked like fear. "Elena?" She turned. Ryan stood 5 feet away, his face pale. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. "Hello, Ryan," she said calmly. His eyes traveled from her face to Luca, then down to the ring on her finger. "What is this? What are you doing?" "Attending a charity gala with my husband." She said it simply, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Luca, this is Ryan Whitmore. Ryan, meet Luca DeLuca." Luca extended his hand, and after a frozen moment, Ryan shook it. Elena could see the confusion in Ryan's eyes. He knew the DeLuca name, knew it meant power and danger, and he couldn't figure out how Elena had gone from humiliated bride to this man's wife in 24 hours. "I don't understand," Ryan said, looking at Elena. Yesterday I was making a mistake," Elena interrupted. "Today I corrected it. Turns out getting left at the altar was the best thing that could have happened to me." Ryan's face flushed. "Elena, you can't just—" "Actually, I can." She smiled, and it felt like putting on armor. "Now, if you'll excuse us, my husband and I have people to see." She walked away on Luca's arm, leaving Ryan standing there looking like his world had just tilted off its axis. Her heart was pounding, but she kept her head high, her stride confident. "Well done," Luca murmured. "You're a natural." They spent the next hour circulating through the gala. Luca introduced her to people, business associates, politicians, society figures, and Elena played her part perfectly. She smiled, made small talk, and didn't flinch when people asked pointed questions about her sudden marriage. "It was a whirlwind," she'd say with a mysterious smile. "Sometimes you just know." Then, at 9 p.m., everything changed. Elena was talking to a city councilwoman when she noticed a commotion near the entrance. Ryan's father, Charles Whitmore, was having an intense conversation with another man, his face red and angry. Victoria Whitmore looked stricken. "Excuse me," Luca said to the councilwoman. He guided Elena toward a quiet corner. "It's starting." "What's starting?" "Watch." Within minutes, the whispers spread through the ballroom like wildfire. Elena caught fragments of conversation. "Whitmore Investments is bankrupt. Fraud investigation. Selling everything." The Whitmores were being destroyed in real time, and everyone was watching it happen. Charles Whitmore stormed over to Luca, his face purple with rage. You did this! You fed those lies to the press!" "I fed the truth to the press," Luca corrected calmly. "There's a difference. You have no proof. I have financial records, testimony from your former accountants, and documentation of every fraudulent transaction your family has made in the last 3 years." Luca's voice was cold. "Would you like me to publish those too, or would you prefer to accept your losses quietly?" Charles looked like he wanted to hit him, but something in Luca's expression, something dangerous and untouchable, made him step back instead. "This isn't over," Charles said. "Yes," Luca replied softly. "It is." The Whitmores left the gala 20 minutes later, and the whispers continued long after they were gone. Elena stood next to Luca, watching the society that had once embraced the Whitmores turn on them like sharks smelling blood. "Feel better?" Luca asked quietly. Elena thought about Ryan's face when he'd seen her, about the shock and confusion and dawning realization that she'd landed on her feet in a way he'd never expected. "Yes," she said, "I really do." They stayed until 11, then left together. In the car ride home, Elena felt the adrenaline finally wearing off, leaving her exhausted and a little shaky. "You did well tonight," Luca said, breaking the silence. "Better than I expected." "Thanks, I think." "Tomorrow, the papers will run the stories. By the end of the week, the The Whitmores will be completely shut out of high society. Ryan will probably have to leave the city entirely to escape the scandal. He looked at her. Is that what you wanted? I don't know what I wanted, Elena admitted. I just knew I couldn't let them win. Then you got what you needed. He paused. The contract says we need to maintain separate bedrooms for appearances in the household, but we should discuss how we'll handle public affection. People will expect to see some level of intimacy between us. How much intimacy? Holding hands, standing close, the occasional kiss in public. Nothing more unless you're comfortable with it. His tone was businesslike. This is a performance, Elena. I won't ask for more than the contract specifies. It should have been reassuring. Instead, it just reminded her how transactional all of this was. Okay, she said quietly. I can do that. When they arrived home, Elena went straight to her room. She took off the gown, removed the makeup, and stood in the bathroom in just a robe, staring at her reflection. Mrs. DeLuca. That's who she was now. Her phone, a new one that Luca had provided, buzzed with a text. She picked it up and saw it was from a number she didn't recognize. This is your mother's new nurse at Brightwater. Just wanted to let you know your mom is settling in well. She's asking about you. When would you like to visit? Elena's throat tightened. She'd been so caught up in everything, the wedding disaster, Luca's proposition, the gala, that she hadn't even gone to see her mother yet. She texted back, "Tomorrow morning, I'll be there at 9. Then she climbed into bed and stared at the ceiling, trying to figure out what came next. She'd gotten her revenge. She'd secured her mother's care. She'd married a man who promised security and protection in exchange for playing a role. But as she lay there in the dark, in a bedroom that belonged to a stranger's house, wearing a ring that symbolized a contract instead of love, Elena couldn't help wondering what she'd actually gained and what it would cost her in the end. The morning light through the curtains felt wrong, too soft, too expensive. Elena woke disoriented, reaching for her phone before remembering none of this was her real life. Except it was now. The ring on her finger caught the light, emerald and diamonds throwing prismatic colors across white sheets that probably cost more than her old monthly rent. Her mother. She'd promised to visit at 9. Elena showered quickly, then stood in front of the closet Teresa had filled with clothes she'd never have chosen for herself. Everything was designer, perfectly tailored, and completely foreign to who she'd been 3 days ago. She picked a simple navy dress and flats, trying to hold on to something that felt like her. Downstairs, Luca was in what Teresa called the breakfast room, which was still bigger than Elena's old living room, reading a newspaper with his coffee. He looked up when she entered. Sleep well? Not really. No point lying. I'm going to see my mother this morning. I know, Marco will drive you. He set down the paper. Before you go, we need to discuss something. Elena poured herself coffee, needing the caffeine before whatever conversation this would be. All right. The gala made waves exactly as planned. By this afternoon, 3 major clients will have pulled their accounts from what's left of Whitmore Investments. Charles Whitmore tried calling me at 6 this morning. I didn't answer. Luca's tone was matter-of-fact. He'll try to negotiate, offer me something to make this stop. I won't take it. Good. The word came out harder than Elena intended. I'm telling you this because reporters will start digging into our marriage. They'll want the story, and some of them won't be kind about it. He studied her. Can you handle that? I handled last night. Last night was controlled environment. The press is different. They'll dig into your past, your mother's situation, every detail of what happened at that cathedral. They'll try to paint you as a gold digger or an opportunist. Elena set down her coffee cup. Let them. I know what I am and what I'm not. Anyone who believes tabloid headlines isn't worth my time anyway. Something flickered in Luca's expression. Approval, maybe, or surprise. Fair enough, but if any reporter approaches you directly, don't engage. Refer them to my PR team. You have a PR team? I have teams for everything. He stood. Marco's waiting out front. Your mother's nurse has been briefed on what to tell her, that you've married someone who can provide proper care for her, nothing more. Let her believe whatever version makes her comfortable. You think of everything, don't you? I try to. Luca paused at the doorway. Elena, your mother's care is guaranteed regardless of how this marriage plays out. That's in the contract. You don't need to worry about it being used as leverage. It should have been comforting, Instead, it just reminded her that every kindness in this arrangement came with terms and conditions. Marco turned out to be the driver from yesterday, quiet, professional, and built like he could break someone in half if needed. The drive to Brightwater Manor took 30 minutes through parts of the city Elena rarely saw, where the houses had gates and the streets had names instead of numbers. Brightwater itself looked more like a luxury hotel than a care facility. The lobby had marble floors, fresh flowers, and staff members who smiled like they actually meant it. The nurse who met Elena at reception was young, maybe 30, with kind eyes. "Mrs. DeLuca, I'm Sarah, your mother's primary nurse. She's doing wonderfully. We've adjusted her medications, and she's already responding well to the new physical therapy routine." Mrs. DeLuca. Elena still wasn't used to hearing it. "Can I see her?" "Of course. She's in the sunroom. Fair warning, she's very excited to meet your new husband." Sarah smiled apologetically. "I mentioned you'd gotten married, and she's been asking questions all morning." Elena's stomach tightened. "What did you tell her?" "Just that you married someone who wants to make sure she gets the best care possible." She filled in the rest herself. "You know how mothers are." They walked down a hallway that smelled like lavender instead of antiseptic, past rooms with actual artwork on the walls. Sarah stopped at a doorway where sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows. Elena's mother sat in a chair by the window, looking healthier than she had in months. The stroke had left her right side weak, her speech sometimes slurred, but now her color was better and she was dressed in real clothes instead of a hospital gown. "Elena!" Her mother's face lit up, though her smile was still slightly crooked. "My baby girl, come here." Elena crossed the room and knelt beside her mother's chair, taking her hand carefully. "Hi, Mom. How are you feeling?" "Better. So much better. This place is—" Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "Honey, I don't understand. You said the wedding was off, that Ryan, and now Sarah says you're married to someone else?" "It's complicated, Mom." "Is he good to you?" Her mother squeezed Elena's hand with surprising strength. "This new husband?" Elena thought about Luca's cold efficiency, his calculated revenge, the contract that bound them. "He takes care of things. He's making sure you get proper treatment. But do you love him?" The question hit like a physical blow. Elena opened her mouth, closed it, tried to figure out how to answer without lying, but without telling the truth either. "I married him," she said finally. "That's what matters." Her mother studied her face with the too sharp perception that came from years of reading her daughter's moods. "Elena Marie Carter, you are a terrible liar. What's really going on?" "It's DeLuca now, actually. Elena DeLuca." She said the name carefully, testing how it felt. "And what's going on is that I made a choice that keeps you safe and taken care of. Can that be enough?" "Not if you're miserable." "I'm not miserable. I'm just adjusting." Elena squeezed her mother's hand. "Ryan would have been a mistake, Mom. I see that now. This is better. You loved him. I loved who I thought he was. Turns out I was wrong about that." The bitterness crept into her voice despite her best efforts. "He humiliated me at the altar because his family decided I wasn't good enough, in front of everyone." Her mother's expression hardened. "He did what?" Elena hadn't meant to say it, but the words came spilling out. The cathedral, Ryan's speech, running through the rain, Luca's offer. She left out the parts about the mafia and the calculated revenge, but the core story was there. When she finished, her mother was quiet for a long moment. "This new husband," she said finally. "He's the one who destroyed the Whitmores? I saw it on the morning news. Their company's in ruins." "Yes." "Good." Her mother's voice was fierce despite the slur. "They deserved it. And this Luca, he offered you a way out when you had nothing?" "He offered me a business arrangement that benefits us both. But he takes care of you." "In his way, yes." Her mother leaned back in her chair, looking tired suddenly. "Then I won't ask if you love him. I'll ask if you're safe with him. Are you?" Elena thought about the security at Luca's house, the way people at the gala had looked at him with fear and respect in equal measure, the cold certainty in his voice when he told Charles Whitmore it was over. "Yes," she said. "I'm safe." "Then that's enough for now." Her mother closed her eyes. "Love can come later, or it doesn't have to come at all, as long as you have respect and security." Your father and I, we loved each other, but we were poor and struggling, and it wore us down. Don't romanticize suffering, baby girl. If this man gives you stability and protection, that's worth something." It wasn't the response Elena had expected, but then her mother had always been practical about survival. They talked for another hour about smaller things, the facility, the physical therapy, the food that was apparently restaurant quality. Elena promised to visit twice a week and left her new phone number. As she was leaving, her mother called out, "Elena, bring him next time. I want to meet the man who married my daughter." "I will," Elena promised, though the thought of Luca and her mother in the same room felt surreal. Marco was waiting by the car when she emerged. The drive back was quiet until Elena's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Saw you at the gala. We need to talk." "Ryan." Elena stared at the message. Part of her wanted to delete it immediately, but curiosity won out. "We have nothing to talk about." The response came seconds later. "Please, just meet me for coffee." One conversation. She should say no. Should block the number and forget Ryan Whitmore ever existed. But something made her hesitate. Maybe the need to hear what excuse he could possibly have. Maybe just the desire to see him squirm. "Marco, can you take me to Cafe Veritas on 5th Street? Marco glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "Mr. DeLuca is expecting you back for lunch. Text him that I'll be late. This won't take long." Marco looked like he wanted to argue, but he changed direction without comment. 20 minutes later, they pulled up outside a coffee shop that Elena recognized. She and Ryan used to come here in the early days of their relationship, before his family got involved, before everything got complicated. "I'll wait here," Marco said. It wasn't a question. Elena found Ryan at a corner table, looking terrible. His suit was wrinkled, his face unshaven, and he had dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't slept. He stood when she approached, then seemed to remember he had no right to courtesies anymore. "Thank you for coming," he said as she sat down. "You have 15 minutes. Talk." Ryan flinched at her tone. "I deserve that. I deserve worse than that." "Elena, I'm so sorry for what happened at the cathedral." "Which part? The public humiliation? The lies about me being a gold digger? Or the part where you threw away 3 years like they meant nothing?" "All of it." He looked genuinely miserable. "I didn't want to do it. My father insisted, said if I went through with the wedding, he'd cut me off completely. Our family's been hemorrhaging money for months, and he blamed you for it somehow, said you were a distraction and a liability." "Nah, so you chose your family's money over me." "I chose survival. I was weak and stupid, and I regretted every second." Ryan reached across the table like he might take her hand, then thought better of it. "But Elena, this marriage to Luca DeLuca, you can't actually want that. He's dangerous. Everyone knows what he is." "What he is," Elena said quietly, "is someone who keeps his promises. Unlike some people. He's using you. Can't you see that? This marriage, showing up at the gala together, it's all part of whatever game he's playing to destroy my family. Maybe, but at least he's honest about what he wants from me. You pretended to love me while planning to humiliate me in public." She stood. "We're done here, Ryan." "Wait." Ryan grabbed her wrist, not hard, but enough to stop her. "I still love you. I know I don't deserve another chance, but if you wanted out of this marriage, I could help you. We could start over, leave the city, go somewhere neither of our families could touch us." Elena looked at his hand on her wrist, then at his face. A week ago, this is what she would have wanted. Ryan choosing her over his family, offering to run away together like something from a romance novel. Now it just looked pathetic. "Let go of me." Her voice was cold. "Elena, I said let go." Ryan released her wrist and Elena stepped back. "You don't get to do this. You don't get to destroy me and then offer to save me when you realize you made a mistake. I'm not your backup plan." "It's not like that." "Yes, it is. You threw me away when it was convenient, and now that I've landed somewhere you can't touch, you want me back. But I'm not coming back, Ryan. Not ever." She walked out before he could respond, Marco falling into step beside her as they headed to the car. She was shaking, from anger or adrenaline or something else she couldn't tell. "You all right, Mrs. DeLuca?" Marco asked quietly. The name steadied her. Mrs. DeLuca. Not Ryan's almost wife, not the girl who got humiliated at the altar. Someone new. I'm fine, let's go home. Home? When had she started thinking of Luca's house as home? When they arrived, Teresa intercepted her in the foyer. Mr. DeLuca is in his office. He asked to see you when you returned. Elena found Luca behind a massive desk, working on a laptop. The office was all dark wood and leather, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and windows overlooking the grounds. He looked up when she entered. How's your mother? Better? The facility's amazing. Thank you for arranging it. That's what the contract says I'd do. He closed the laptop. Marco tells me you made a stop. Coffee with Ryan Whitmore. Of course Marco had told him. He texted, asked to meet. I was curious what he'd say. And? He apologized, said he still loves me, offered to help me escape this marriage and run away with him. Elena crossed her arms. I told him no. Luca studied her. Did you want to say yes? A week ago, maybe. Now? She shook her head. He's pathetic. He chose his family's money over me, and now that I'm with you, he suddenly wants to play hero. I'm not interested in being anyone's redemption arc. Good. Luca stood and came around the desk. Because starting tomorrow, things are going to get more complicated. My business partners want to meet you. There's a dinner Wednesday night, strictly formal, where you'll be introduced as my wife to people who matter in my world. What kind of people? The kind who don't ask questions and don't give second chances. His tone was serious. These dinners are part of how I maintain relationships and show strength. Having a wife demonstrates stability. But these men will be watching you, evaluating whether you're an asset or a liability. Elena's stomach tightened. What do I need to do? Be polite, don't ask about anyone's business, and if someone asks you a question you're not comfortable answering, redirect to me. Smile, but not too much. Make eye contact, but don't stare. You're presenting as someone confident in her place at my side. That's a lot of rules. That's survival in my world. He moved closer. I need to know you can handle this, Elena. Last night was high society playing dress-up. Wednesday is the real thing. These people are dangerous, and appearing weak in front of them is not an option. Then I won't appear weak. You say that now. I stood at an altar while the man I loved called me a gold digger in front of 200 people, Elena interrupted. I survived that. I can survive dinner with your business partners. Luca's expression shifted, something like respect flickering in his eyes. All right, then we start preparing tomorrow. There are specific people you need to know about, specific topics to avoid, and you need to learn how to read a room quickly. Why are you helping me with this? I mean, really helping, not just ordering me around. He was quiet for a moment. Because if you fail in front of these people, it reflects on me. And because... He paused. Despite what you might think, I don't enjoy watching people drown. You're in this situation because of choices I made as much as choices you made. The least I can do is make sure you don't get eaten alive. It was more honesty than Elena had expected from him. Okay, then teach me what I need to know. They spent the rest of the afternoon in his office while Luca briefed her on the men who'd be at Wednesday's dinner. Vincent Caruso, who ran construction and waste management. Anthony Rizzo, who handled gambling operations. Marco's father, Sal, who controlled the waterfront. Each man had a wife or girlfriend who'd be there, each one with her own power dynamics and unspoken rules. The wives are just as dangerous as the men, Luca said. They're watching you to see if you're competition or if you're an idiot who'll cause problems for their husbands. Vincent's wife, Angela, runs the social hierarchy. If she accepts you, the others follow. If she doesn't, what happens if she doesn't? Then you become a target. Nothing direct. They're too smart for that. But suddenly, you're excluded from information, isolated at events, and vulnerable. He leaned back. Angela respects strength and hates weakness. Don't try to be her friend. Just show her you're not someone she can push around. How do I do that? By not backing down when she tests you. Because she will test you. Luca's expression was serious. These women have spent years establishing their positions. You're new, unknown, and married to someone with significant power. They need to know where you fit. Elena absorbed this, trying not to feel overwhelmed. Is there anything else I should know? Yes. Don't drink too much. Don't laugh at jokes you don't understand. And if anyone asks about your previous engagement, be honest but brief. The truth is always easier to remember than a lie. The truth being that Ryan's family used me and threw me away when I was no longer convenient? Exactly. These people understand betrayal. They respect survivors. He stood. We're done for today. Teresa's arranged for dinner at 7. Try to rest before then. You look exhausted. Elena did feel exhausted. The emotional whiplash of the last few days was catching up to her. She returned to her room and lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Ryan. Please don't shut me out. I made a mistake and I'm trying to fix it. She deleted it without responding. That evening at dinner, Luca was back to being formal and distant, discussing business calls he needed to make and events they'd need to attend together. It felt like having dinner with a particularly polite stranger who happened to control her entire life now. There's a tailor coming tomorrow, he said over dessert. You need more formal wear for the dinner Wednesday. Let Teresa know if there are specific styles you prefer. I don't really have preferences anymore. Elena pushed food around her plate. Everything's so different from what I used to wear that it doesn't feel like my choice anyway. Luca set down his fork. You could try making it your choice. This doesn't have to be something done to you, Elena. You can participate in shaping how you present yourself, as long as it fits within your requirements. Yes, but within those requirements, you have freedom. He paused. I'm not trying to erase who you were. I'm trying to give you tools to survive who you are now. That's surprisingly thoughtful for a business arrangement. I told you, I don't enjoy watching people drown. He stood. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. Elena went to bed early but couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Wednesday dinner, about Angela Caruso and the other wives, about walking into a room where everyone was dangerous and no one would hesitate to use her weakness against her. Finally, around midnight, she gave up on sleep and wandered downstairs. The house was quiet except for the sound of her bare feet on marble floors. She found herself outside Luca's office, where light still spilled from under the door. She knocked softly. Come in. Luca was still at his desk, reading something on his laptop. He looked up, surprised. Can't sleep? No, I keep thinking about Wednesday. Second thoughts? More like 50th thoughts. Elena sat in the chair across from his desk. How do you do this? Walk into rooms full of dangerous people and never look afraid? Who says I'm not afraid? He closed the laptop. I just don't let them see it. That's not helpful advice. It's the only advice there is. He studied her. Elena, you've already survived the worst moment of your life. You stood at that altar and took everything Ryan threw at you, then walked away and made a choice that put you here. That takes more courage than most people have. That was different. I was desperate. So use that. Walk into Wednesday dinner remembering that you've got nothing left to lose and everything to gain. These people can't take anything from you that hasn't already been taken. Elena thought about that. He was right. She'd already lost everything. Her dignity, her future with Ryan, her old life. What could Angela Caruso or anyone else possibly do to her that would be worse than standing at that altar? Okay, she said quietly. I can work with that. Good. Luca stood and moved to the small bar in the corner of his office. Drink? I probably shouldn't. One drink won't hurt, and you look like you could use it. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey and handed her one. To surviving. Elena raised her glass. To surviving. The whiskey burned going down, but it was grounding. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Elena asked, Can I ask you something? Depends on the question. Why me? I mean, really, you could have found any number of women willing to marry you for money and security. Why pick someone you found in an alley having the worst day of her life? Luca swirled his whiskey, considering. Because you were desperate enough to say yes without asking too many questions. Because you had personal motivation to help me destroy the Whitmores. And because... He paused. Because when I offered you that contract, you read every word before agreeing. Even soaking wet and heartbroken, you were smart enough to know what you were signing. That suggested you'd be smart enough to handle the rest of this. That's very calculated. That's how I stay alive. He met her eyes. But if you're asking whether I feel anything beyond strategic convenience, the answer is, I don't let myself feel much of anything. It's safer that way. That sounds lonely. It's practical. He finished his whiskey. Go to bed, Elena. Tomorrow we have work to do." She went back upstairs, but his words stayed with her. Luca De Luca had built a life where everything was calculated, where people were assets or liabilities, where feeling things was dangerous. And somehow, Elena had become part of that life. Tuesday blurred past in preparations. The tailor came and went, taking measurements and showing Elena fabric samples that all looked expensive and foreign. Teresa drilled her on proper table settings and which topics were safe for small talk. Luca ran her through scenarios: what to say if someone asked about her background, how to deflect questions about his business, how to excuse herself gracefully if a conversation turned uncomfortable. By Tuesday night, Elena's head was spinning with rules and expectations and the growing weight of Wednesday's dinner. "You're overthinking it," Luca said as they reviewed everything one last time. "Just be yourself, filtered through the requirements we've discussed." That's like saying just breathe, but only with approved air. He almost smiled. "You'll be fine. Trust me." "I don't know you well enough to trust you." "Then trust the contract. I have just as much writing on Wednesday going well as you do." He stood. "Get some rest. We leave at 6 tomorrow." Elena tried. She really did. But sleep wouldn't come. And eventually she gave up and sat by the window, watching moonlight on the grounds, trying to prepare herself for walking into a room full of people who could destroy her with a word. She thought about her mother's question: "Are you safe with him?" The answer was yes, but safety came with a price. And tomorrow night, she'd start paying it. Wednesday arrived with gray skies that matched Elena's mood. She'd barely slept, and when Teresa knocked at 7 with breakfast, Elena was already dressed in workout clothes, having spent the last hour doing yoga poses she half remembered from a class she'd taken years ago. Anything to burn off the nervous energy. "Mr. De Luca asked me to remind you the stylist arrives at 2, Teresa said, setting down a tray, "and he'd like to see you in his office at noon. Elena nodded, not trusting her voice. The breakfast sat untouched as she stared out the window, mentally rehearsing everything Luca had taught her. Don't back down from Angela Caruso. Don't ask about anyone's business. Don't drink too much. Don't appear weak. The list felt endless. At noon, she found Luca in his office with another man, older, maybe 60, with silver hair and the kind of face that had seen too much. They both looked up when she entered. "Elena, this is Sal Rossi, Marco's father." Luca gestured to the man. "He wanted to meet you before tonight." Sal stood and extended his hand. His grip was firm, but not aggressive. "Mrs. De Luca, I've heard interesting things about you." "Nothing too terrible, I hope," Elena said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "On the contrary, Luca tells me you have spine. That's good. You'll need it tonight." Sal's eyes were sharp, assessing. "My wife Maria will be there. She's direct, sometimes too direct. Don't take it personally." "I'll try not to." "You'll fail, probably, because Maria specializes in getting under people's skin. But as long as you don't cry or run away, you'll be fine." He turned to Luca. "She'll do. Better than I expected, actually." "High praise from Sal," Luca said dryly after the older man left. "He usually hates everyone." He said, "I'll do." That's not exactly a ringing endorsement. In his world, it is. Luca leaned against his desk. "How are you holding up?" "Terrified, but functional." Elena crossed her arms. "What if I mess this up? What if I say the wrong thing? Or then you recover and keep going. These people aren't looking for perfection, Elena. They're looking for weakness. As long as you don't give them that, you'll survive the night." "You keep saying survive like this is a battlefield." "Because it is. Just a different kind of war." He checked his watch. "The stylist will be here soon. Let her do her work, and I'll see you at 6. We'll arrive together." The stylist turned out to be a woman named Claudia, who worked with the efficiency of someone who'd dressed dangerous men's wives before. She brought 3 different gowns, all in jewel tones, all cut to convey power rather than sex appeal. "Mr. De Luca said sophisticated and untouchable," Claudia explained, holding up a deep burgundy dress against Elena. "These dinners aren't about being the prettiest woman in the room. They're about being the most formidable." Elena ended up in a midnight blue gown that hugged her frame without being revealing, with sleeves that went to her elbows and a neckline that was all business. Claudia paired it with the diamond earrings from the gala and a bracelet that looked antique and probably cost more than Elena wanted to know. "Hair up," Claudia decided. Classic, nothing trendy. You want to look like you belong in old money, not like you're trying too hard. By the time Claudia finished, Elena barely recognized herself in the mirror. This woman looked cold, controlled, expensive. Nothing like the girl who'd run from a cathedral 5 days ago. Perfect, Claudia said with satisfaction. You look like someone people should be afraid to underestimate. At 6, Elena descended the stairs to find Luca waiting in a black suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. He looked her over with that assessing gaze she was getting used to. Good. You look exactly right. He offered his arm. Ready? No, but let's go anyway. The drive to the restaurant took 40 minutes, heading into a part of the city Elena didn't know well. The place itself looked unremarkable from the outside. A brownstone with no sign, no indication it was anything special. But when Luca opened the door, Elena understood immediately that this was the kind of establishment where reservations didn't exist, because the people who came here didn't need them. A man in a suit that screamed security nodded to Luca. Mr. DeLuca, they're waiting in the private room. Of course they are, Luca murmured. To Elena he added quietly, stay close. Don't wander off. Don't excuse yourself without telling me first. They walked through a main dining room where conversation stopped as people noticed Luca. The private room in the back was intimate, a single round table set for 12 with wine already breathing and low lighting that created shadows in corners. 6 men stood talking and 5 women sat at the table watching. Every eye turned to Elena. Luca! A man in his 50s stepped forward. Vincent Caruso, Elena remembered from Luca's briefings. About time. We were starting to think you'd gotten cold feet about introducing us to this mysterious wife of yours. Traffic was terrible, Luca said smoothly. Vincent, everyone, this is Elena. Elena, this is the group I told you about. The introductions blurred together. Vincent and Angela Caruso, Anthony and Teresa Rizzo, Sal and Maria Rossi, and 3 other couples whose names Elena struggled to hold on to. But it was Angela who commanded attention. Late 40s, still beautiful in a sharp-edged way, wearing a dress that cost more than some people's monthly salary. Her eyes traveled over Elena with the precision of a surgeon looking for the exact place to cut. So you're the one who was supposed to marry Ryan Whitmore, Angela said, her voice carrying across the room. That must have been embarrassing. The other conversations stopped. Everyone was watching to see how Elena would respond. It was humiliating, Elena said evenly. But it turned out to be the best thing that could have happened to me. Otherwise, I wouldn't have married Luca. How convenient that he was waiting in the wings. Angela's smile didn't reach her eyes, almost like it was planned. Nothing about that day was planned. I was just lucky that when everything fell apart, someone was there to offer me something better. Elena met Angela's gaze steadily. I don't believe in wasting time on regret. Ryan made his choice, I made mine, and now I'm here. The silence stretched for a beat too long. Then Angela laughed, a sharp, genuine sound. Well, you're not what I expected. Come sit next to me, Elena. I want to hear how you managed to land Luca DeLuca in less than a week. The tension in the room eased slightly. Luca's hand pressed briefly against the small of Elena's back, approval or relief, she couldn't tell. They took their seats, Elena between Angela and Maria Rossi, with Luca directly across from her. Dinner started with small talk about business ventures Elena didn't understand and people she didn't know. She stayed quiet, listening, learning the dynamics. Vincent clearly led the group, but Luca held his own, never deferring, never backing down. Sal watched everything with shrewd eyes. Anthony Rizzo was louder, more volatile, making jokes that had an edge. The wives, meanwhile, conducted their own parallel conversation about charity events and country club politics, and whose daughter was getting married. Elena participated when asked direct questions, but mostly observed, trying to figure out the hierarchy Angela had warned Luca about. So Elena, Maria Rossi said suddenly, her voice cutting through the chatter. Luca tells us you were a nurse before you got married. Why'd you quit? The question felt loaded. Elena chose her words carefully. Ryan convinced me it wasn't appropriate for his wife to work. Turned out to be bad advice from someone I shouldn't have trusted. And now, will you go back to nursing? This from Teresa Rizzo, who looked younger than the other wives and seemed nervous. I haven't decided yet. Right now, I'm focused on settling into my new life and making sure my mother gets the care she needs. Your mother's sick? Angela's tone sharpened. What's wrong with her? She had a stroke 2 years ago. She needs full-time care. Elena met Angela's eyes. That's partly why Ryan's family dismissed me. They saw my mother as a liability, an expense they didn't want to take on. But Luca did. Angela looked across the table at Luca, something calculating in her expression. Interesting. My wife's family is my responsibility, Luca said simply. That's how it works. The men at the table nodded. This was language they understood. Family, loyalty, obligation. Elena realized Luca had just claimed her mother as part of his family, putting her under his protection in a way that meant something to these people. Halfway through the main course, Angela leaned close to Elena and said quietly, "You're doing better than I expected. Most new wives either try too hard to fit in or cry in the bathroom by now." Should I be insulted or flattered? Both, probably. Angela took a sip of wine. Let me give you some advice, one wife to another. These men, our husbands, they're dangerous. They do things we don't ask about and probably don't want to know about. Our job is to maintain the appearance of normalcy, to run the social side of things, and to never, ever show weakness in front of the other families. Why are you telling me this? Because Luca's been alone too long, and having a wife changes the dynamics. It makes him more approachable, more human. That can be good or bad depending on how you handle it. Angela's eyes were serious now. Don't make him look weak. That's the only unforgivable sin in our world. I'll remember that. Good. Now smile and pretend we're talking about something boring like flower arrangements. Elena smiled and Angela launched into a detailed description of centerpieces for an upcoming charity gala that Elena was apparently now expected to help organize. The other wives joined in, and Elena found herself being absorbed into their world whether she wanted to be or not. The men's conversation turned to business, real estate deals and waterfront contracts and other things spoken in careful code. Elena caught Luca's eye once, and he gave her a subtle nod. She was doing okay. She hadn't failed yet. Then Anthony Rizzo, who'd been drinking steadily, said loudly, "So Luca, how does it feel knowing you got Ryan Whitmore's leftovers? That must sting, even for you." The table went silent. Elena felt her face flush, but before she could respond, Luca's voice cut across the room like ice. "Careful, Anthony. You're talking about my wife." "I'm just saying she was supposed to marry someone else. She was supposed to marry an idiot who didn't know what he had. I do." Luca's tone was pleasant, but there was steel underneath. "And if you value our friendship, you won't finish that sentence." Anthony raised his hands in mock surrender. "No offense meant. Just curious how it all went down so fast." "It went down fast because I don't waste time when I see something I want." Luca's eyes stayed on Anthony. "Elena's past with Whitmore is irrelevant. What matters is she's mine now, and anyone who disrespects her disrespects me. We clear?" Anthony nodded quickly. "Crystal clear. Sorry, Elena. No disrespect intended." "None taken," Elena said, though her heart was racing. She'd just watched Luca defend her honor in a room full of dangerous men, and the casual way he'd done it, the certainty in his voice when he said she was his, sent something complicated through her chest. Vincent Caruso cleared his throat. "On that note, let's talk about the waterfront project. Sal, you have the permits arranged?" The conversation moved on, but Elena was still processing what had just happened. Luca had claimed her publicly and unmistakably. Not because he loved her, they both knew this was a business arrangement, but because in his world, what was his was protected. No exceptions. After dinner, the group moved to a sitting area for coffee and dessert. The women clustered together while the men talked business in the corner. Angela poured Elena an espresso and said, "That was well played." "What was?" "Not reacting when Anthony was an ass, letting Luca handle it." Angela stirred sugar into her coffee. Some new wives would have gotten defensive, tried to defend themselves. That would have looked weak. You stayed quiet and let your husband deal with it. That's smart. "I didn't really have a choice. I was frozen." Frozen and smart looked the same from the outside. Angela studied her. "You're going to be fine in this world, Elena. You've got the right instincts. Just don't let anyone see you doubt yourself." Maria Rossi joined them, setting down her coffee with a loud clink. My son says you're living at Luca's estate. How's that going? He can be intense. It's an adjustment, Elena admitted. Everything's different from what I'm used to. Marriage to any of these men is an adjustment, Teresa Rizzo said quietly. She looked tired. You get used to it eventually. Or you learn to pretend you are, which is close enough. That's cheerful, Elena muttered. That's realistic. Maria leaned back. Look, these men, they're not like normal husbands. They disappear for days sometimes, come home with blood on their clothes they won't explain, make phone calls they won't let you hear. You learn not to ask questions, not to push, not to expect normal. But you stay. Because leaving isn't an option. And because despite everything, there are benefits. Maria gestured around the room. Security, money, protection. Your mother's being taken care of in the best facility in the city, right? That doesn't happen if you're married to some accountant working 9 to 5. Angela shot Maria a look. You're scaring her. I'm being honest. Better she knows now than figures it out the hard way. Maria turned to Elena. You made your choice when you married him. Now you live with it. That's how this works. The bluntness was jarring, but Elena appreciated it more than Angela's careful diplomacy. At least Maria was telling her the truth. This life came with costs Elena was only beginning to understand. The evening wound down around 11. As people started leaving, Vincent pulled Luca aside for a conversation that looked serious. Elena waited by the door with Angela. He's getting you involved in his world faster than most, Angela observed. That's either good or bad, depending on how you look at it. Which is it? Too early to tell. But Elena? Angela's voice dropped. If you ever need anything, advice, help, someone who understands what this life is like, call me. I'm serious. We wives, we look out for each other because no one else will. She pressed a business card into Elena's hand, then swept out with Vincent. The other couples followed until it was just Elena and Luca standing in the entryway. You survived, Luca said. How do you feel? Exhausted, confused, like I just got inducted into something I still don't fully understand. That's accurate. He guided her to the car where Marco was waiting. But you did well. Angela doesn't offer her number to just anyone, and Vincent seemed impressed. That's as good as tonight could have gone. In the car, Elena kicked off her heels and leaned her head back against the leather seat. Anthony called me your leftovers. Anthony's an idiot who drinks too much. Luca's voice was flat. Ignore him. You didn't ignore him. You defended me. Because you're my wife. That means something in our world, even if the marriage itself is a contract. He looked at her. I told you before. I keep my promises. Part of this arrangement is that you're under my protection. That includes your reputation. Thank you. It felt inadequate, but Elena didn't know what else to say. They drove in silence until Luca's phone rang. He answered, his expression darkening as he listened. When? How bad? All right, I'll handle it. Keep him there until I arrive. He ended the call and leaned forward. Marco, change of plans. Take us to the warehouse on Pier 7. Now? Elena asked. It's almost midnight. Problem that can't wait. Luca's tone had shifted. Colder now. All business. I'll have Marco take you home after I deal with this. What kind of problem? The kind you don't need to know about. He saw her expression and sighed. Elena, this is what Maria was talking about. There are parts of my life you're better off not understanding. But I'm supposed to just accept that you disappear to warehouses at midnight and not ask questions? Yes, that's exactly what you're supposed to do. His voice was firm. This isn't negotiable. The car pulled up to a dark building on the waterfront. Luca got out, then paused at the door. Marco, take Mrs. DeLuca home. Don't leave her until she's inside safely. Wait! Elena grabbed his arm before he could close the door. Be careful. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe. I'll be fine. This is just business. Then he was gone, walking into the warehouse with two men who'd appeared from the shadows. Marco pulled away from the curb, and Elena watched the building disappear behind them. Is he really going to be okay? She asked Marco. Mr. DeLuca can handle himself, Mrs. DeLuca. He's been doing this a long time. But that didn't answer whether he'd be safe. Elena spent the drive home imagining worst-case scenarios. then got angry at herself for caring. This was a business arrangement. Luca had made that clear from the beginning. What he did and where he went wasn't supposed to matter to her beyond how it affected their contract. Except it did matter. She'd watched him defend her tonight, watched him claim her as his in front of dangerous men, watched him walk into that warehouse without hesitation. And despite everything, despite the contract and the cold efficiency and the fact that this marriage was fake, she'd felt something when he'd said she was his. Something that scared her more than Angela Caruso or Anthony Rizzo or any of the dangerous people she'd met tonight. She was starting to care about Luca DeLuca. Back at the house, Teresa was waiting up. Mr. DeLuca called, said you did wonderfully tonight, and to make sure you had everything you needed. I'm fine, just tired. Elena headed for the stairs. Do you know when he'll be back? No, ma'am. He doesn't usually share that information. Elena went to her room and changed out of the gown, but she couldn't settle. She kept checking her phone, listening for the sound of a car in the driveway, trying to distract herself with television she wasn't really watching. At 2 a.m., she heard the front door open. She was out of bed before she'd consciously decided to move, padding down the hallway in bare feet and pajamas. Luca was in the foyer, taking off his jacket. There was blood on his shirt. Are you hurt? The words came out sharper than she intended. He looked up, surprised to see her. It's not mine. Go back to bed, Elena. Whose blood is it? Someone who made bad choices. He started walking toward his wing of the house. This doesn't concern you. You can't just come home covered in blood and tell me it doesn't concern me. She followed him. What happened at that warehouse? Luca stopped and turned. His eyes were cold, harder than she'd ever seen them. Do you really want to know? Because once I tell you, you can't unhear it. You can't pretend you don't know what I'm capable of. Elena hesitated. Maria's words came back to her. You learn not to ask questions, not to push, not to expect normal. This was the moment where she could step back, could choose ignorance and the comfortable distance that came with it. But she'd never been good at taking the safe option. Tell me, she said. Luca studied her for a long moment, then walked into his office. Elena followed. He poured himself a drink, downed it in one swallow, and turned to face her. The problem was a man named Danny Cortez. He worked for Anthony Rizzo, handling collections for the gambling operations. Turns out Danny was skimming money, about $50,000 over the last 6 months. Anthony wanted him dealt with. Dealt with how? He wanted him dead. Standard punishment for theft in our world. Luca's voice was matter of fact. But I negotiated a different solution. Danny paid back what he stole plus interest, and I broke his left hand as a reminder not to steal again. He'll live, but he won't work in this business anymore. Elena felt sick. You broke his hand. I could have killed him. That was the expectation. Instead, I showed mercy, which Danny will remember, and which Anthony can accept without looking weak. Luca set down his glass. That's what I do, Elena. I hurt people. Sometimes I kill them. I operate in a world where violence is currency and reputation is everything. And you're married to me, which means you're connected to that world whether you like it or not. Why are you telling me this? Because you asked, and because you need to understand what you're really part of. He moved closer. I'm not a good man. I'm not someone you should care about or worry about when I leave at midnight. I'm someone who does terrible things to survive in a terrible world, and the only reason you're safe is because I've decided you are. That's supposed to make me feel better? That's supposed to make you smart. His eyes were intense. Go back to bed, Elena. Stop waiting up for me. Stop worrying about whose blood is on my clothes, and stop asking questions you don't want the answers to. He walked past her, heading for what she assumed was his bedroom. Elena stood in his office, shaking slightly, staring at the glass he'd left on the desk. She should be horrified. She should be terrified. She should be planning how to get out of this contract and away from Luca DeLuca and this world of violence and danger. Instead, all she could think about was how tired he'd looked when he told her he'd shown mercy. How the blood on his shirt was there because he'd chosen not to kill someone. How in a world where violence was expected, he'd negotiated a different solution. Elena went back upstairs, but she didn't sleep. She lay in bed thinking about Luca, about the contract between them, about the fact that despite everything he'd just revealed, she still wasn't afraid of him. Maybe she should be. But when she remembered the way he'd defended her at dinner, the way he'd made sure her mother was cared for, the way he'd walked her through preparing for tonight. She couldn't reconcile that man with the one who broke bones in warehouses. Or maybe they were the same man, and that was the real problem. Maybe Luca DeLuca was exactly as complex and contradictory as he appeared, and Elena was starting to care about him anyway. The realization kept her awake until dawn. The next morning came too early. Elena dragged herself out of bed after maybe 3 hours of restless sleep, images of blood-stained shirts and broken hands playing on repeat every time she closed her eyes. She found Luca already in the breakfast room, looking completely refreshed, reading the newspaper like he hadn't spent half the night breaking someone's hand in a warehouse. "You look terrible," he said without looking up. "Didn't sleep well." "Because of what I told you last night." He folded the paper and studied her. "I warned you that you didn't want to know." "You were right, I didn't." Elena poured coffee with hands that weren't quite steady. "But now I do know, and I can't unknow it, so here we are." "Here we are?" he echoed. "Are you going to have a breakdown? Leave? Because if you are, I need to know now so I can start damage control." The casual way he said it stung more than it should have. "I'm not leaving. I signed a contract and my mother needs that facility you're paying for. I'm just adjusting." "Good. Because we have an event tonight, smaller than the dinner, just cocktails with some of Vincent's business associates. You need to be functional." "I said I'm fine." "You said you're adjusting. That's not the same thing." Luca stood and walked over to her, tilting her chin up so she had to meet his eyes. "Elena, if you can't handle this, tell me now. I can work around it, find other arrangements for your mother, release you from the contract. But I need to know you're not going to fall apart when things get difficult." She jerked her chin away from his hand. "I stood at an altar and got destroyed in front of 200 people. I married a stranger the next day. I walked into a room full of criminals and held my own. I think I can handle knowing my husband isn't a saint." "Your husband is a lot worse than not a saint." "I'm aware." Elena took a long drink of coffee, kneading the burn. "What time do we need to leave tonight?" Luca watched her for another moment, then seemed satisfied that she wasn't about to crack. 7. Wear something less formal than the dinner. This is cocktails, not a sit-down meal. And Elena? If you need to talk to someone about what you're feeling, don't talk to me. Call Angela or Maria. They understand this life better than I do." "Because you don't feel anything?" "Because I stopped letting myself feel things a long time ago." He picked up his newspaper. "It's easier that way." Elena spent the morning trying to distract herself with mundane tasks, calling her mother's facility to check in, responding to texts from the nurses, organizing the clothes Teresa had arranged in her closet. But her mind kept drifting back to Luca, to the blood on his shirt, to the cold efficiency in his voice when he'd described breaking Danny Cortez's hand. Around noon, her phone rang. Angela Caruso. "How are you holding up after last night?" Angela asked without preamble. "Fine. Tired, but fine. You're a terrible liar. Maria texted me this morning, said Luca came home late with that look he gets when he's had to handle something messy. Did he tell you about it?" Elena hesitated. "Some of it." "And now you're spiraling, wondering what kind of man you've married and what that makes you for staying." Angela's voice was knowing. "Am I close?" "Uncomfortably close. Here's what I learned when I married Vincent 23 years ago. You can't survive in this world if you think about it too much. You accept that your husband does things you'd rather not know about, you focus on the parts of your life you can control, and you build your own space within the marriage where you're safe. That sounds like giving up. That sounds like surviving. There's a difference." Angela paused. "Listen, I'm having lunch at Club Meridian tomorrow at 1. Join me. We'll talk about things that aren't our husband's business dealings." "I don't know if I should. I'm not asking. 1 o'clock, Club Meridian. Marco knows where it is." Angela hung up before Elena could argue. Elena stared at her phone, then texted Luca. "Angela invited me to lunch tomorrow. Is that okay?" His response came immediately. "Yes. Good for you to build relationships with the other wives. Take Marco with you." So she was being managed again, pushed toward relationships that served Luca's purposes. Elena tried to feel angry about it, but couldn't muster the energy. Maybe Angela was right. Maybe survival meant focusing on what she could control and letting go of the rest. That evening's cocktail party was at a penthouse in the financial district, hosted by one of Vincent's business associates named Richard Chen. The space was all glass and steel, with views of the city that would have been breathtaking if Elena hadn't been so exhausted. "Stay by my side," Luca murmured as they entered. "This crowd is different from the dinner, more ambitious, less established. They'll be looking for ways to use you to get to me." "How reassuring." "Just keep your guard up." The party was smaller than the gala, but more intense. Everyone seemed to be sizing everyone else up, looking for advantages and weaknesses. Elena recognized a few faces from the dinner, but most were strangers. Luca introduced her to a parade of people whose names she immediately forgot, all while keeping a possessive hand at the small of her back. "So you're the infamous Elena De Luca," said a woman in a red dress who introduced herself as Melissa Chen, Richard's wife. "The girl who went from jilted bride to Luca's wife in 24 hours. That's quite a story." "Life moves fast sometimes," Elena said neutrally. "I'll say, Ryan Whitmore must be kicking himself." Melissa leaned in conspiratorially. "Between you and me, I never liked the Whitmores. Too pretentious, always acting like they were better than everyone else. It's nice to see them taken down a peg." "Several pegs, from what I hear," said the man next to her, Richard Chen himself. "Their company's basically defunct. They're selling their North Shore property, and Ryan's father is under investigation for fraud. Someone really did a number on them." His eyes flicked to Luca, who showed no reaction. "Karma's interesting that way," Elena said carefully. "Sometimes people get exactly what they deserve." Richard laughed. "Diplomatic. I like that. Luca, your wife is smarter than she looks." "She's smarter than most people in this room," Luca said coolly. "That's why I married her." The conversation moved on, but Elena felt the weight of Richard's assessment. These people were always watching, always measuring, always looking for an angle. It was exhausting. Halfway through the evening, Elena excused herself to find the bathroom. She was washing her hands when the door opened and a woman walked in. Young, maybe 25, wearing a dress that was trying too hard. "You're Elena, right? Luca's new wife?" The woman's smile didn't reach her eyes. "That's right. I'm Sophia. I used to date Luca, about a year ago." She pulled out lipstick and reapplied it slowly. "He probably didn't mention me." "He didn't, no." Elena dried her hands, wanting to leave but trapped by politeness. "We were together for 6 months. He never talked about marriage then. Said he wasn't the type to settle down. Guess he changed his mind." Sophia's tone was light, but there was something sharp underneath. "Or maybe you just caught him at the right moment, after that whole situation with the Whitmores made you available." "I should get back. I'm not trying to cause trouble. I just think it's funny, you know? How fast he moved. Almost like he'd been watching you before the wedding fell apart, waiting for his chance." Sophia capped her lipstick. "But maybe I'm just being paranoid. Luca does love a good opportunity when he sees one." She left before Elena could respond. Elena stood there, her reflection staring back at her in the mirror, Sophia's words echoing in her head. Had Luca been watching her before the cathedral disaster? Had their encounter in that alley been less coincidence and more calculation than he'd admitted? When she returned to the party, Luca noticed immediately. "What's wrong?" "Nothing, just tired." "You're lying." He steered her to a quiet corner. "What happened?" "I met Sophia, your ex-girlfriend, apparently." Luca's expression darkened. "What did she say to you?" "That you two dated, that you never wanted to get married then, that maybe you'd been watching me before Ryan called off the wedding." Elena crossed her arms. "Was any of that true?" "I dated Sophia briefly. It wasn't serious, and I ended it 6 months ago. As for the rest..." He stopped, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I knew who you were before we met in that alley. I'd researched the Whitmore family while planning how to destroy them, which meant I knew about Ryan's engagement. When I saw the wedding announcement, I saw your picture." Elena's stomach dropped. "So you did plan it, the whole thing?" "No, I didn't plan for Ryan to humiliate you at the altar. That was his family's decision, not mine. I didn't plan to find you in that alley. But when I did, when you were desperate and vulnerable and had nowhere else to turn, I saw an opportunity and I took it." His voice was steady, unapologetic. "That's what I do, Elena. I see opportunities and I exploit them. So I'm just another business move to you. You're a strategic advantage that also happens to benefit you. That's not the same as using you. He grabbed her arm when she started to turn away. Don't walk away from me in the middle of a party. People are watching. Then maybe you should have thought about that before admitting you've been manipulating me from the start. I haven't been manipulating you. I've been honest about what this marriage is, a transaction that serves us both. The fact that I knew who you were before we met doesn't change the terms of our contract or the benefits you're receiving. His grip tightened slightly. Now smile and act like we're having a pleasant conversation, because Richard Chen is watching and I need him to see a united front. Elena wanted to scream, wanted to walk out of this party and this marriage and this whole twisted situation. But Angela's words came back to her. You accept that your husband does things you'd rather not know about. You focus on the parts of your life you can control, and you build your own space within the marriage where you're safe. She smiled. It felt like putting on armor made of glass. Better, Luca murmured. We'll talk about this at home. For now, just get through the next hour. That hour stretched like torture. Elena smiled and made small talk and played the role of Luca's devoted wife while fury burned under her skin. Sophia watched from across the room with a satisfied expression. Richard Chen observed everything with calculating eyes, and Luca kept his hand on her back, a constant reminder that she was his, whether she liked it or not. The drive home was silent except for the sound of rain hitting the car windows. Elena stared out at the city, feeling like she'd been played from the beginning. Every kindness, every protection, every moment where she'd thought maybe Luca was more than just a cold businessman. All of it was calculated. Say what you need to say, Luca said finally. You used me. I offered you a deal when you had no other options. That's not the same thing. You researched me. You knew about Ryan, knew about my mother, knew everything before you ever spoke to me. Elena turned to face him. That wasn't coincidence, Luca. That was stalking. That was due diligence. I research everyone connected to the people I'm planning to destroy. It's how I stay ahead. He met her eyes. Yes, I knew who you were. Yes, I'd seen your picture. But I wasn't planning to approach you until I saw you in that alley, broken and desperate. Then I made a decision, offer you a way out that also served my purposes. Would you have preferred I left you there to figure things out on your own? I would have preferred you be honest about it from the start. If I'd told you I'd been researching the Whitmores and knew everything about your life before we met, would you have trusted me enough to get in my car? The honest answer was no. She probably would have run, which meant Luca's deception had been necessary to get her to accept his offer. I hate that you're right, Elena said quietly. I'm usually right. You'll get used to it. He looked back out the window. Sophia approached you tonight to cause trouble. She's angry I ended things and has been trying to undermine me for months. Don't let her get in your head. Too late. Then get her out of it. She doesn't matter, Elena. What matters is that our arrangement works, that we both benefit, and that we present a united front to the people who are watching us. He paused. What also matters is that despite how this started, I have kept every promise I made to you. Your mother is being cared for. Your debts are cleared. You have security and resources you didn't have before. Those are facts, regardless of how we met. Elena wanted to argue, but he was right again. Whatever Luca's methods, whatever his motivations, he had delivered on everything he'd promised. She was better off now than she'd been standing in that alley, even if it meant being married to a man who saw her as a strategic advantage. At home, Elena went straight to her room. She changed into pajamas and was about to climb into bed when there was a knock on her door. It's me, Luca's voice came through. Can I come in? It's your house. He opened the door but stayed in the threshold. I came to tell you something, the truth about why I approached you that day. You already told me I was an opportunity. You were. But that's not the whole story. He leaned against the doorframe. The night before your wedding, I was finalizing plans to leak the Whitmore scandal. I knew it would destroy Ryan's father, probably force the family to leave the city. I felt good about it, righteous even. Then I saw your wedding announcement in the paper with your picture, and I thought about how you'd be collateral damage in my revenge. Elena sat up straighter. What do you mean? I almost called off the whole thing because I didn't want to hurt an innocent person. You weren't part of the Whitmore corruption. You were just someone who'd made the mistake of falling for their son. Luca's expression was unreadable. Then Ryan humiliated you at the altar, and I realized I could give you a way out while still destroying them. It solved my conscience problem and my need for a wife at the same time. Your conscience problem? I'm not completely heartless, despite what you might think. I just don't let feelings interfere with business usually. He straightened. But you should know that I do feel things, Elena. I just don't show them because showing them is dangerous. And one of the things I felt when I saw you in that alley was guilt. Because I'd been planning to ruin the family you were about to marry into, and I knew that would hurt you too. So this whole marriage is your way of making yourself feel better about destroying the Whitmores? Partly. It's also practical and beneficial in everything else I've told you. But yes, there's a piece of me that felt like I owed you something for the pain my plans would cause. He pushed off from the doorframe. Take that however you want. I just thought you should know. He left before she could respond, pulling the door closed behind him. Elena sat there in the dark, trying to process this new information. Luca DeLuca, the man who broke bones in warehouses and operated in a world of violence and danger, had almost canceled his revenge plan because he didn't want to hurt her. It didn't make sense. None of this made sense. But it did explain why he'd approached her, why he'd offered the contract, why he kept his promises with such careful precision. Luca was trying to balance the scales, to give back something equivalent to what his revenge had taken away. Elena didn't know if that made him better or worse than she'd thought. Maybe it just made him human, complicated and contradictory like everyone else. She finally fell asleep around 3 a.m., exhausted from trying to figure out a man who didn't want to be figured out. The next day, Marco drove her to Club Meridian for lunch with Angela. The club was exactly what Elena expected. Old money, quiet wealth, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone and newcomers were scrutinized. Angela was already seated at a corner table, wearing a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than Elena's former monthly salary. "You made it," Angela said, gesturing to the chair across from her. "I wasn't sure you would." Luca said it was good for me to build relationships with the other wives. Elena sat down. "So, here I am, being managed. That's marriage to men like ours. Everything is strategy, even friendships." Angela poured water from a crystal pitcher. "But that doesn't mean the friendships can't be real, too. How are you holding up?" "I'm tired of that question." "Then I'll ask a different one. Has Luca shown you the worst of what he is yet? Or are you still in the honeymoon phase where he pretends to be civilized?" Elena almost laughed. "He showed me, last night actually. His ex-girlfriend cornered me in the bathroom to tell me he'd been stalking me before we met." Angela's eyebrows rose. Sophia Moretti, tall, brunette, desperately wants to be relevant again? "That's the one." "She's full of it. Luca didn't stalk you. He researched the Whitmores, which is different. And Sophia's bitter because Luca dumped her when she started asking too many questions about his business." Angela leaned forward. "Let me tell you something about Luca DeLuca. He's cold, he's calculating, and he does terrible things without blinking. But he's also one of the few men in our world who has actual principles. He won't involve innocence if he can help it. He keeps his word even when it's inconvenient, and he takes care of the people under his protection. You sound like you admire him." "I respect him. There's a difference." Angela picked up her menu. "Vincent's known Luca for 15 years, and in all that time, Luca has never betrayed a confidence or broken a deal. That's rare in our world. Most men would sell out their own mothers for the right price. But he still hurts people. He still does violent, terrible things." "Yes, and so does Vincent and Anthony and every other man in our world. The question isn't whether your husband is violent. They all are. The question is whether he's violent with purpose or just violent because he can be. Luca is the former. He doesn't hurt people for fun." The waiter arrived, and they ordered. Elena got a salad she probably wouldn't eat, and Angela ordered salmon with the ease of someone who'd been doing this her entire adult life. "How did you do it?" Elena asked when the waiter left. "How did you accept what Vincent is and build a life anyway?" "I separated the man from the work. At home, Vincent is my husband. He takes out the trash or argues with me about stupid things, watches bad TV. Outside our house, he's someone else, someone who does things I don't ask about. I focus on the man I live with and try not to think too much about the other version." Angela's expression softened slightly. "It's not perfect. There are nights I can't sleep because I know he's out there doing something terrible. But then I think about the alternative, leaving him, losing everything, starting over with nothing. And I stay. That sounds like being trapped. That sounds like making a choice and living with it. We all make choices, Elena. Some of them are bad, some are good, most are somewhere in between. You chose to marry Luca when you had no other options. Now you're choosing to stay even though you know what he is. Own that choice. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty about it. Their food arrived, and the conversation shifted to lighter topics. The charity gala Angela was organizing, the renovation she was planning for her house, the vacation she and Vincent were taking next month. It was almost normal, except for the security guards Elena had noticed stationed near the exits, and the way everyone in the club seemed aware of who Angela was. "Can I ask you something?" Elena said as they finished lunch. "Do you love Vincent?" Angela was quiet for a moment. "I did once. Madly, stupidly, the way you love someone when you're young and think love conquers everything. Now?" She considered. "I love the life we've built, the stability we have, the respect we've earned together. Whether that's the same as loving him, I honestly don't know anymore. But it's enough." "That's sad." "That's realistic." Angela signaled for the check. "Elena, you're still new to this world. You still think in terms of romance and grand gestures and true love? Give it time. You'll learn that survival and partnership are worth more than passion." "I hope you're wrong." "So do I, actually." Angela signed the check and stood. "But I've been in this world long enough to know how it usually goes. Come on, I'll walk you out." In the parking lot, Angela paused before getting into her car. "One more thing. If Luca ever crosses the line with you, if he hurts you or threatens you or makes you genuinely afraid, call me. I know people who can help, who can get you out safely. I'm serious about that." "Why would you help me against someone Vincent does business with?" "Because I was you once, young, new to this world, trying to figure out how to survive it. No one helped me, and I've regretted that for 20 years. I won't make the same mistake with you." Angela got into her car. "Be smart, Elena. And don't fall in love with Luca De Luca. That's the one thing that will destroy you faster than anything else in this world." The drive home gave Elena too much time to think. About Angela's warning, about Luca's confession last night, about the fact that despite everything, the violence, the manipulation, the cold calculation, Elena was starting to understand him. And understanding was dangerous. Understanding led to sympathy, which led to caring, which led to exactly what Angela had warned her against. At home, Teresa intercepted her in the foyer. "Mr. DeLuca is in his office. He asked to see you when you returned." Elena found him at his desk, as usual, but this time he was on the phone, his voice low and tense. He gestured for her to sit, then ended the call. "Problem?" she asked. "Nothing you need to worry about. How was lunch with Angela?" "Enlightening. She told me not to fall in love with you." Luca's expression didn't change. "Smart advice. She also said you're one of the few men in your world with actual principles." "Angela's being generous. Or honest." Elena leaned forward. "Luca, why did you really marry me? Not the strategic reasons, not the revenge angle, the real reason." He was quiet for a long time, studying her face like he was trying to decide how much truth to give her. Finally, he said, "Because I'm tired of being alone. I'm tired of relationships that are transactions, of never trusting anyone, of going home to an empty house after doing terrible things. When I saw you in that alley, I saw someone who understood loss and desperation and survival. I thought maybe we could build something real out of all that shared damage. But you structured it as a business deal." "Because I don't know how to do anything else. This is who I am, Elena, someone who turns everything into a transaction because it's safer than risking actual feelings." He stood and came around the desk. "You asked for the truth, that's it. I married you because I hoped that maybe, eventually, this fake marriage could become something less fake. But I didn't tell you that because I didn't want you to feel pressured into something you never signed up for." Elena's breath caught. This was the most honest Luca had ever been with her, and it changed everything. He wasn't just a cold businessman using her for strategic advantage. He was someone lonely and damaged, trying to build connection the only way he knew how. "What if I told you it's working?" she said quietly. "What if I told you that despite the contract and the calculation and everything else, I'm starting to care about you anyway?" Then I'd tell you to be careful. Because caring about me is dangerous and I don't want to be responsible for hurting you more than you've already been hurt. He reached out and touched her face gently. You deserve better than this, Elena. Better than me, better than this world, better than a marriage that started as a business deal. Maybe I don't want better. Maybe I just want real. She stood, closing the distance between them. You said you wanted this to become something less fake. So let's start now. No more contracts, no more transactions. Just two people trying to figure out if they can actually make this work. That's a terrible idea. Probably. But I'm done playing it safe. Safe got me humiliated at an altar. Risky got me here. With you. With a chance at something that might actually matter. She took his hand. So what do you say, Luca de Luca? Want to try being married for real? He looked at their joined hands, then at her face, something shifting in his expression. You're going to regret this. Maybe. But at least I'll regret it honestly. Luca pulled her closer, and for the first time since they'd met, he kissed her like he meant it. Not for show, not for appearances, but because he wanted to. Elena kissed him back and felt the careful walls she'd been building around her heart start to crumble. This was dangerous. Angela had warned her. Maria had warned her. Even Luca had warned her. But Elena had spent her whole life playing it safe, and safe had gotten her nowhere. So she chose dangerous instead and prayed it would be worth it. When Elena woke the next morning, Luca's side of the bed was empty. Not the guest room anymore, not separate wings of the house. His bed, which had become their bed sometime in the hours after that kiss in his office. She reached across the sheets, still warm from where he'd been sleeping, and tried to remember when exactly she'd stopped being afraid of him and started being afraid of losing him. The door opened and Luca appeared with 2 coffee cups, wearing pajama pants and nothing else. Elena was still getting used to seeing him like this, relaxed, unguarded, almost normal. You're staring, he said, handing her a cup. You brought me coffee. I'm allowed to stare. Fair enough. He sat on the edge of the bed. I have meetings today, but I should be done by 6. I thought maybe we could have dinner together. Just us. No business associates or social obligations. Like a real married couple. Something like that. He hesitated, then added, Your mother called my phone this morning. She wants both of us to visit this weekend. Elena sat up straighter. You talked to my mother? Briefly. She's determined to meet me, and I figured we couldn't avoid it forever. His expression was unreadable. Unless you'd rather I didn't come. No, I want you there. I'm just surprised you agreed. Elena sipped her coffee. She's going to interrogate you, you know. Ask about your intentions and whether you're treating me right. I can handle a protective mother. I've handled worse. He stood. I need to get ready. Marco will be here if you need to go anywhere. Luca? Elena caught his hand. Thank you for saying yes about my mother. I know family visits aren't in the contract. We're past the contract, remember? You said so yourself. He squeezed her hand and left. Elena spent the morning in a strange state of contentment mixed with low-level anxiety. Things with Luca had shifted so fast, from business arrangement to something real, from separate bedrooms to shared space, from careful distance to actual intimacy. It was what she'd asked for, but it was also terrifying. Around noon, her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Elena Carter? A man's voice, unfamiliar. Elena DeLuca, she corrected automatically. Right, of course, Mrs. DeLuca now. This is Detective James Morrison with the Metro Police. I'm investigating some financial irregularities involving the Whitmore family, and your name came up in our research. I was hoping you might be willing to answer a few questions. Elena's stomach dropped. About what? About your relationship with Ryan Whitmore and his family. Specifically, what you might know about their business dealings. His tone was friendly, but Elena heard the trap underneath. It would just be a brief conversation, maybe over coffee. I know you're busy with your new marriage, but this investigation is important. I don't know anything about the Whitmore's business. Ryan never discussed that with me. That's fine. Sometimes people know things without realizing they know them. A comment Ryan made, something you overheard at a family dinner. It could be helpful. He paused. Or if you'd prefer, we could have this conversation at the station. But I thought coffee would be more comfortable for everyone. It was a threat wrapped in politeness. Elena's mind raced. I need to discuss this with my husband first. Is there a reason you need his permission to talk to the police? There's a reason I don't talk to anyone about anything important without consulting him. That's what marriage means. She kept her voice steady. Give me your number. I'll call you back. She hung up before he could argue and immediately called Luca. What's wrong? He asked, answering on the first ring. A detective just called. Morrison, Metro Police. He wants to talk to me about the Whitmores, said I came up in their investigation. Elena paced her bedroom. He made it sound like I don't have a choice. You absolutely have a choice. Don't talk to him, don't agree to meet him, don't answer any questions. Luca's voice was hard. Did he threaten you? Not directly, just implied that if I didn't meet him for coffee, we'd be having this conversation at the station instead. That's a bluff. They have nothing on you. You weren't involved in any of the Whitmore business dealings. Morrison's fishing, hoping you'll say something useful. She heard him moving, probably leaving wherever he'd been. I'm coming home. Don't talk to anyone until I get there. Luca, you don't have to take... I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up. Elena sat on the bed, her hand shaking slightly. She'd known marrying Luca would pull her deeper into his world, but she hadn't expected the police to come calling. What had the Whitmores told them? What were they trying to pin on her? Luca arrived in 15 minutes, not 20, with another man Elena didn't recognize. Late 50s, expensive suit, carrying a briefcase. This is David Brennan, my attorney, Luca said. David, my wife, Elena. Mrs. DeLuca. Brennan shook her hand. Luca told me about Detective Morrison's call. I need you to tell me exactly what he said, word for word, if you can remember. Elena recounted the conversation as precisely as possible. Brennan took notes, asked clarifying questions, and then said, This is standard intimidation tactics. Morrison knows you're married to Luca now, and he's hoping you're scared enough of that connection to cooperate. But you have no legal obligation to talk to him without a lawyer present, and I strongly advise you don't. What if he comes back with a subpoena? Elena asked. Then we'll deal with it, but right now, he's just fishing. Brennan looked at Luca. The Whitmore investigation is getting desperate. Charles Whitmore is probably trying to deflect blame onto anyone he can think of, including Elena. They're hoping she'll say something that contradicts the Whitmore story or gives them ammunition against you. So this is really about Luca, not me. Everything is about Luca when you're married to him, Brennan said bluntly. That's the reality of your situation, Mrs. DeLuca. People will try to use you to get to your husband. You need to be prepared for that. After Brennan left, Elena and Luca sat in his office. She felt shaken in a way she hadn't since the cathedral. I'm sorry, Luca said quietly. I should have warned you this might happen. Would it have changed anything? Probably not, but you deserve to know. He pulled her closer. Morrison won't bother you again. I'll make sure of it. How? By making it clear that harassing my wife has consequences. His tone was cold. Morrison's not stupid. He knows who I am and what I'm capable of. This was a test to see if you were vulnerable. Now he knows you're not. Because I have you protecting me. Exactly. He kissed her forehead. That's what this marriage means, Elena. You're under my protection, and anyone who comes after you comes after me. The fierceness in his voice should have been frightening. Instead, Elena found it reassuring. She'd spent so long being vulnerable, being the one people could hurt without consequence. Having someone who'd fight for her, really fight, with all the power and danger that entailed, felt like finally being safe. I love you, she said, the words surprising her as much as him. Luca went still. What? I love you. I know it's fast, I know it's probably stupid given how this all started, but I do. Elena pulled back to look at him. You don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know. He stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he said, I don't know if I'm capable of love. I've spent so long keeping people at a distance, turning everything into a transaction. I don't know if I can be what you need. I don't need you to be anything except honest with me. If you can't love me back, that's okay, but don't lie about it. I'm not lying. I'm telling you I don't know. He touched her face gently. What I do know is that you matter to me in a way no one has in a very long time, that I think about you constantly, that the idea of anything happening to you makes me want to destroy anyone who might hurt you. If that's love, then maybe I do love you, but I don't trust my own feelings enough to be sure. That's honest enough for now. Elena leaned into his touch. We'll figure it out as we go. The rest of the week passed in a strange new rhythm. Luca still had his meetings and his late-night calls and his business that Elena didn't ask about, but he also came home for dinner, spent nights in their shared bed, and treated her less like an asset and more like a partner. Saturday came, and they drove to Brightwater Manor together. Elena's mother was waiting in the sunroom, looking healthier than she had in years. Her physical therapy was paying off. She could stand now with minimal assistance, and her speech was clearer. Elena, her mother's eyes filled with tears, and you must be Luca. Mrs. Carter. Luca shook her hand carefully. It's good to finally meet you. Sit, both of you. I want to look at you properly. She studied Luca with the sharp assessment only mothers could manage. You're older than Ryan was. By about 10 years, yes. And more dangerous from what I've read in the papers. She didn't sound accusatory, just matter of fact. They say you destroyed the Whitmore family. Is that true? Mom, Elena started, but Luca cut her off. Yes. I exposed their financial fraud and made sure everyone knew what they'd done. They destroyed themselves. I just helped speed up the process. Because they hurt my daughter. That was part of it. Luca met her gaze steadily. I also had business reasons for wanting them gone, but yes, what they did to Elena factored into my timeline. Elena's mother was quiet for a moment. You're honest, at least. Ryan used to talk around difficult questions, try to make everything sound prettier than it was. I appreciate directness. She turned to Elena. Are you happy? I'm getting there, Elena said carefully. It's complicated, Mom. Marriage always is. The question is whether it's complicated in a way you can live with. Her mother looked back at Luca. My daughter's been through enough. If you're going to hurt her, do it now before she gets any more attached. I have no intention of hurting her, but I can't promise I won't, because my world is dangerous and Elena's part of that now. Luca's voice was steady. What I can promise is that I'll protect her, provide for her, and treat her with the respect she deserves, and that if anyone tries to hurt her, they'll answer to me. That's not exactly a romantic declaration. I'm not a romantic man, Mrs. Carter. I'm a practical one who spent most of his life alone by choice. Your daughter changed that. She's made me want things I'd convinced myself I didn't need. I don't know if that's love, but it's the closest I've come in a very long time. Elena's mother studied him for another long moment, then nodded. All right, that's good enough for now. But Luca, if you ever make my daughter cry the way Ryan did, you'll have more to worry about than business rivals and police investigations. You'll have me. Luca actually smiled. I believe you. They stayed for 2 hours talking about safer topics, Elena's mother's progress, the facility, plans for the holidays. When they finally left, Elena's mother hugged her tightly and whispered, He's a good man underneath all that danger. Hold on to him. In the car, Elena said, She likes you. She threatened me. That's not the same as liking me. She threatened you because she likes you. If she didn't, she wouldn't bother. Elena leaned her head on his shoulder. Thank you for being honest with her. I don't know how to be anything else with the people who matter. That night, they had dinner on the terrace overlooking the grounds. Luca had arranged for Teresa to set up a private table, and they ate while the sun set over the trees. It felt almost normal, like they were just a regular married couple and not two people who'd met in an alley 3 weeks ago. I have to go to Chicago next week, Luca said over dessert. Business meetings, 2 or 3 days. You can come if you want, or stay here. Will it be dangerous? Not particularly. Boring, mostly. Contracts to negotiate, people to reassure that our operation is stable. He paused. But it would mean more time with me doing things you can't ask about. Elena considered. I'll come. Angela told me to build my own space within this marriage, but I want to understand your world too, even the parts I can't ask about. That's probably not wise. Nothing about this marriage has been wise. Why start now? They flew to Chicago on Monday in a private jet that made Elena feel like she'd stepped into a different universe. The hotel was luxury she couldn't have imagined before meeting Luca. And the meetings were held in conference rooms that probably cost more per hour than most people made in a month. Elena stayed quiet during the business discussions, observing the way Luca operated. He was commanding without being aggressive, firm without being inflexible. The men he met with, all dangerous in their own ways, treated him with respect that bordered on fear. She started to understand the weight of the reputation he'd built, the careful balance he maintained between ally and threat. On their last night in Chicago, Luca took her to dinner at a restaurant that required reservations months in advance. They were seated at a private table in the back, and halfway through the meal, Luca said, "I've been thinking about what you said, about loving me." Elena's heart sped up. And? And I think I've been lying to myself about what I feel. I told you I didn't know if I was capable of love. But the truth is, I've been in love with you for weeks, and I didn't want to admit it. He reached across the table and took her hand. You scare me, Elena. The idea of caring this much about someone, of giving them power to hurt me, it goes against everything I've built my life on. But I'm tired of being alone. I'm tired of treating everything like a transaction. You asked me to try being married for real, and that means being honest about what I feel. He squeezed her hand. I love you. I don't know how to do it properly, and I'll probably mess it up constantly, but I do love you. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. You're doing fine so far. I haven't even started yet. He stood and pulled her up with him. Come on, let's get out of here. We haven't finished dinner. I don't care about dinner. He threw cash on the table, way more than the bill would be, and led her out of the restaurant. In the car back to the hotel, he kissed her like he'd been waiting his whole life to do it, and Elena kissed him back with equal intensity. Things changed after Chicago. The walls Luca had kept around himself started coming down piece by piece. He talked more about his past, about the choices that had led him into this life, about the things he'd done that still haunted him. Elena listened without judgment, understanding that this was his way of letting her in. She also started building her own space within their marriage. Like Angela had advised, she volunteered at a health clinic in the city, using her nursing skills for the first time in months. She had lunch with Maria and Teresa regularly, learning the unspoken rules of being married to men like theirs. She visited her mother twice a week and brought Luca sometimes, watching the relationship between them grow stronger. 2 months after they'd returned from Chicago, Elena came home from the clinic to find Luca in his office looking stressed. What's wrong? She asked. Ryan Whitmore contacted me. He wants to meet. Elena's blood went cold. Why? He didn't say, just asked if I'd give him 15 minutes at the coffee shop on 5th Street tomorrow at noon. Luca looked at her. I'm inclined to tell him to go to hell, but this is partly your business too. What do you think? I think I want to be there when you meet him. Elena, he destroyed me in front of everyone. I want to see him face the consequences. She sat across from Luca's desk. Let's find out what he wants. The next day, they walked into the coffee shop together, the same one where Elena had met Ryan weeks ago. He was already there, looking worse than last time, thinner, older somehow, with the kind of exhaustion that came from watching your whole life collapse. Elena, Luca. Ryan stood awkwardly. Thank you for coming. You have 15 minutes, Luca said flatly. Start talking. Ryan looked at Elena, and she saw something broken in his eyes. I came to apologize. To both of you, but especially to you, Elena. What I did at the cathedral, what my family made me do, it was unforgivable. You're right, it was. Elena's voice was steady. So why are you here? Apologies don't undo humiliation. I know, but I needed you to hear it anyway, and I needed to tell you that you won, completely. My father's in prison awaiting trial, my mother moved to London to escape the scandal, and he gestured to himself. I'm nobody now. No money, no connections, no future in this city. You and Luca destroyed everything we had. Your family destroyed itself, Luca said coldly. We just made sure everyone knew about it. I'm not arguing. You're right. Ryan turned back to Elena. I see the way you two look at each other. That's real, isn't it? The marriage, the relationship, it's not just for show. Not anymore, Elena said quietly. Good. I'm glad. Because you deserve someone who chooses you over everything else. And I never did that. Luca did. Ryan's voice cracked slightly. I came here to apologize, but also to say goodbye. I'm leaving the city tomorrow, starting over somewhere else. And I wanted you to know that even though I lost everything, I'm glad you found something better. You deserved better than me. He left before either of them could respond, walking out into the street and disappearing into the crowd. Elena watched him go and felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no residual heartbreak. Ryan Whitmore had become irrelevant, a ghost from a life she'd left behind. How do you feel? Luca asked quietly. Free. Elena turned to him. I spent so long being angry at him, wanting revenge, needing him to understand what he'd taken from me. But now I realize he didn't take anything. He gave me an exit from a life that would have made me miserable. I should probably thank him. Let's not go that far. Luca pulled her close. But I understand what you mean. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead to the best outcomes. They left the coffee shop hand in hand, and Elena didn't look back. That chapter was closed. Finished. Done. 6 months after the cathedral disaster that had started everything, Elena stood in the ballroom of the Belmont Hotel for Angela's charity gala. She was wearing a gown that made her feel powerful, standing next to Luca, who'd become more than just her husband. He'd become her partner, her ally, her home. Angela swept over, looking pleased. You two look happy. Disgustingly so, actually. We are, Elena said simply. Good. That means my meddling worked. At Elena's confused look, Angela added, You think it was coincidence that I suggested you for that health clinic volunteer position? Or that I invited you to so many lunches in those early weeks? I was making sure you had support outside of Luca, something of your own to hold on to. You were managing me. I was helping you survive. There's a difference. Angela smiled. Besides, you've done the same for Teresa Rizzo. I see you having lunch with her, helping her figure out how to handle Anthony's temper. We look out for each other in this world. That's how we make it bearable. The gala continued around them. The same society that had watched Elena get humiliated at an altar now treated her like she belonged. Some of them still whispered, still gossiped about how fast she'd moved from Ryan to Luca. But no one questioned her place anymore. She was Luca de Luca's wife, and that meant something. Later, dancing with Luca, Elena thought about how far she'd come. From broken bride to this life she'd built from desperation and risk, and choosing dangerous over safe. What are you thinking about? Luca asked, pulling her closer. About how none of this went according to plan. About how the worst day of my life led to the best thing that ever happened to me. You getting philosophical on me? Maybe. She smiled up at him. Or maybe I'm just grateful. For you, for this life, for the fact that when everything fell apart, you were there to help me build something better. I didn't help you build anything. You did that yourself. I just gave you the tools and got out of your way. He kissed her softly. You're stronger than you think, Elena de Luca. You always have been. The music played on, and they danced through the evening, surrounded by people who'd once watched her fall and now watched her rise. Elena had learned something crucial in these months. Strength wasn't about never breaking down. It was about getting back up after you did, about making hard choices and living with them, about taking risks even when they scared you. She'd been broken at an altar by a man who didn't deserve her. She'd married a stranger out of desperation. She'd walked into a world of danger without knowing if she'd survive it. And she'd done more than survive. She'd thrived. A year later, Elena sat in the sunroom at Brightwater Manor with her mother, who was walking with just a cane now, her speech almost completely recovered. I'm proud of you, her mother said suddenly, for how you've handled everything, for building a real life with Luca. It hasn't been easy. The best things never are. Her mother squeezed her hand. When Ryan destroyed you at that altar, I thought it would break you permanently. I was so scared that you'd never recover, never trust anyone again. But look at you now. You're stronger than ever. I had help. Elena thought about Luca, about Angela and Maria, and all the other women who taught her how to navigate this complicated world. I couldn't have done it alone. None of us can. That's what partnership means, having someone who helps carry the weight when it gets too heavy. That evening, Elena came home to find Luca in his office as usual. But this time, instead of working, he was holding a folder. What's that? She asked. The original contract we signed. The one that was supposed to govern our marriage for 3 years minimum. He handed it to her. I'm terminating it. Elena's heart stuttered. What? Why? Because we're past contracts and negotiations and terms and conditions. Because what we have now is real, and I don't want it defined by a business agreement I wrote when I was trying to protect myself from feeling too much. He pulled her close. I love you, Elena. Not because a contract says I have to, but because I can't help it. And I want our marriage to be based on that, not on paperwork. What if I screw up? What if I do something that would have violated the contract? Then we'll fight about it and figure it out like normal married couples do. No lawyers, no breach clauses, just us working through whatever comes. He kissed her. I'm all in, Elena. Are you? I've been all in since Chicago, maybe even before that. She took the contract and walked to his desk, feeding it into the shredder. They watched the pages disappear, years of careful terms reduced to confetti. So what now? Now we just live. We build a life together without contracts or safety nets or exit strategies. We choose each other every day and hope that's enough. That's terrifying. That's marriage. Luca smiled. But if anyone can handle terrifying, it's you. You walked into my world without flinching. You stood up to Angela Caruso and survived family dinners with men who've killed people. You turned a fake marriage into something real. Terrifying doesn't stand a chance against you. Elena laughed and pulled him closer. Outside, the sun was setting over the grounds they both called home now. Inside, the house felt warm and lived in, filled with the life they'd built together piece by complicated piece. She thought about the girl who'd run from a cathedral in a ruined wedding dress, desperate and broken with nowhere to turn. That girl was gone, replaced by someone stronger, someone who'd learned that sometimes the worst moments led to the best transformations. Ryan Whitmore had meant to destroy her. Instead, he'd freed her to become someone better, someone who knew her own strength, someone who could walk into danger and come out the other side not just surviving, but thriving. And Luca, who'd offered her a contract when she needed salvation, had given her something far more valuable, a partnership built on honesty, respect, and the kind of love that grew from really knowing someone, darkness and all. I love you, she said, the words easy now, natural. I love you too. He said it like a promise, like a choice he was making every day. Come on, let's go upstairs. I'm done working for the night. They walked through the house together, past the office where they'd signed that first contract, past the foyer where she'd arrived soaking wet and desperate, up the stairs to the bedroom they shared. Every room held memories now, of fights and reconciliations, of learning each other, of building something real from a foundation of calculation and necessity. Elena Carter had died at an altar, humiliated and heartbroken. Elena DeLuca had risen from those ashes, stronger and fiercer, and finally, completely free. And as she fell asleep in Luca's arms that night, Elena knew with absolute certainty that every terrible moment, every hard choice, every risk she'd taken had been worth it, because they'd led her here, to a life she'd never imagined, with a man she'd never expected, building a future that was entirely her own. The cathedral disaster hadn't destroyed her. It had been the first step in her transformation from victim to survivor to something even better, someone who knew her worth and refused to settle for anything less than she deserved. And she deserved this, all of it. The happiness, the security, the love that had grown from the most unlikely circumstances. She deserved a husband who chose her every day, who protected her fiercely, who loved her despite his own fear of feeling too much. She deserved the life they were building together, complicated and dangerous and absolutely real. Ryan Whitmore had thrown her away like garbage. Luca DeLuca had seen her worth when she couldn't see it herself. And Elena had found her own strength in the space between those two truths, learning that sometimes the most dangerous decisions led to the strongest rebirths. That sometimes choosing risk over safety was the bravest thing you could do. That sometimes the person you became after everything fell apart was better than the person you'd been before. She'd survived the worst day of her life. She'd built something beautiful from the wreckage. And she'd proven that Elena DeLuca, once Elena Carter, once a girl who ran from a cathedral in tears, was exactly as formidable as she needed to be. Not despite what she'd been through, but because of it. The story that had started with humiliation and desperation had become something else entirely. A love story, a transformation story, A story about finding strength in unexpected places and building a life worth living from the ruins of dreams that had never really been yours to begin with. And in the end, that was all that mattered.